Throughout this course, we've been making changes to our files. Sometimes we ran them manually to test if they still worked after the change. Sometimes we just forgot to do that. This is common for any software project, no matter how big or small. As humans, we're not great at remembering to do lots of stuff. So we can't rely on people remembering to test their code, not even ourselves. Luckily, we don't need to. We can write automated tests to test the code for us, and then use a continuous integration, or CI system, to run those tests automatically. A continuous integration system will build and test our code every time there's a change. This means that it will run whenever there's a new commit in the main branch of our code. It will also run for any changes that come in through pull requests. In other words, if we have continuous integration configured for our project, we can automatically run our tests using the code in a pull request. This way, we can verify that the tests will pass after the new changes get merged back into the tree. And that means instead of hoping our collaborators will remember to properly test their code, we can rely on our automated testing system to do it for us. Once we have our code automatically built and tested, the next automation step is continuous deployment, which is sometimes called continuous delivery, or CD. Continuous deployment means the new code is deployed often. The goal is to avoid rollouts with a lot of changes between two versions of a project, and instead do incremental updates with only a few changes at a time. This allows errors to be caught and fixed early. Typical configurations include deploying a new version whenever a commit is merged into the main tree, or whenever a branch is tagged for release. There's a large world of tools and platforms related to CI/CD, which is what the whole system is usually called. One popular option is Jenkins, which can be used to automate lots of different types of projects. Some repository hosting services, like GitLab, provide their own infrastructure for doing continuous integration. GitHub doesn't offer an integrated solution. Instead, the popular alternative is to use Travis, which communicates with GitHub and can access the information from GitHub projects to know which integrations to run. No matter which tool you use, there are a bunch of concepts that you'll need to deal with when creating your own CI/CD. The first one is a concept of pipelines. Pipelines specify the steps that need to run to get the result you want. For a simple Python project, the pipeline could be to just run the automated tests. For a web service written in Go, the pipeline could be compile the program, run the unit tests and the integration tests, and finally deploy the code to a test instance. Another concept that turns up when doing CI/CD is artifacts. This is the name used to describe any files that are generated as part of the pipeline. This typically includes the compiled versions of the code, but can include other generated files, like PDFs for the documentation or OS-specific packages for easy installation. On top of this, you might want to keep the logs of the pipeline's build and test stages to review if things fail. When setting up CI/CD, we have to be careful about how we manage secrets. If our pipeline includes deploying a new version of the software to a test server, we'll need to somehow give the software that's running the pipeline access to our test server. There are a bunch of different strategies to do this, like exchanging SSH keys or using application-specific API tokens. For some pipelines, it might be unavoidable to use one of these methods. But be aware that you're giving access to your test servers to the owner of the service that's running the pipeline for you. It's a bit like giving your house keys to the person checking your heating once a year. So, 2 things to remember. First, make sure the authorized entities for the test servers are not the same entities authorized to deploy on the production servers. That way, if there's any kind of compromise in the pipeline, your production server is not affected. Second, always have a plan to recover your access in case your pipeline gets compromised. If you want to set up Travis for your GitHub project, you can do that by logging into the Travis website at www.travis-ci.com using your GitHub account. Then enable the projects that you want to continuously integrate. After that, you'll need to add a configuration file to your project, written in YAML format that states the language your project is in and which steps to take for the pipeline. This file can be very simple if your project follows the typical configuration for the language you're using. But it can also become very complex if you want to run a complicated pipeline with lots of stages and steps outside the default. We won't go into a ton of detail here, but there's more info in the next reading coming up. Feel free to read up on it and investigate on your own if you want to continuously integrate and deliver your project.